Let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at something absolutely fascinating, what I like to call the pediatric supercomputer. We are going to explore the literal neurobiology of how specific foods physically fuel a child's developing brain. We aren't just talking about, general health here. We're talking about the actual structural and chemical building blocks that determine how a kid learns, focuses, and remembers. So, let's start with a really relatable question. Is your child struggling in math? Now, your first instinct might be to check their study habits, right? But the source material actually points us straight toward the kitchen. There's this fascinating USDA study where they literally monitored children's brain electricity during math tests. And what they found is just astonishing. Kids who skipped breakfast were essentially running on empty. Researchers saw that these kids had to exert significantly more neural effort just to do mental math and stay focused on the task at hand. I mean, without morning fuel, the brain is working overtime just to keep the lights on, let alone solve complex equations. And the reason behind this massive strain? It's 2 times. Between the ages of 4 and 10, a kid's brain is just this incredibly demanding metabolic engine. It utilizes roughly twice as much glucose as an adult's brain. To put that in perspective, while our adult brains use about 20% of our body's total glucose, a young child's brain is highly neuroplastic. It's constantly building synapses, myelinating pathways, and pruning connections. It is a literal construction site that demands a massive, continuous supply of energy. Let's move to our first major concept, Section 1, the spark, blood sugar and breakfast. But here's the thing, not all sparks are created equal. When we compare high glycemic breakfasts, think sugary cereals and pastries, against low glycemic ones like oatmeal and whole grains, the difference is night and day. High GI foods cause these rapid blood sugar spikes, which are then followed by a severe crash. And clinically, this metabolic roller coaster translates to irritability, social withdrawal, and a huge drop in attention span right around mid-morning. On the flip side, low GI foods provide a sustained release of energy. The soluble fiber in oats, for instance, ensures glucose enters the bloodstream nice and gradually. That gives the brain the steady fuel it needs for rigorous working memory tasks, like, say, that morning math test. All right, so we've got the spark. Next, let's look at how we build the actual machinery. In Section 2, the hardware, lipids and choline. When we break down the brain's physical composition, we often hear that we're supposed to limit fat. But honestly, the brain is actually made up of over 50% fat. And here's the real kicker. An astonishing 25 to 35% of that fat is a very specific type of omega-3 called DHA. You literally cannot build a high-functioning pediatric brain without it. So, it's totally crucial to understand what DHA actually does. Docosahexaenoic acid, which often works alongside its partner, EPA, is heavily concentrated in the neuronal membranes. It dictates the fluidity of the synaptic interface. Basically, it helps brain cells communicate faster. When neurotransmitters can release and bind rapidly, a child processes information a lot quicker. In fact, research shows that kids who got just 400 milligrams of DHA daily showed massive improvements in listening comprehension and vocabulary skills. Real game-changer stuff. Pulling all these hardware components together to build this pediatric supercomputer, kids need omega-3 DHA and EPA for synaptic fluidity and focus. You get that best from fatty cold water fish like salmon and sardines or walnuts. Then we have choline. This is vital for the memory and learning centers of the brain, heavily found in eggs. And finally, iron, which is basically the oxygenation agent for attention. And you'll find that in lean beef and black beans. Let's zoom in on choline for just a second. 150 milligrams. That is exactly what a single egg yolk delivers. Choline is incredibly important for the cholinergic system, and that's what governs long-term memory. According to a 2019 study out of Ryerson University, school-age kids who consumed egg yolks experienced significantly improved word recall and attention scores. For kids under 8, just 2 eggs a day meets their entire physiological requirement to construct those memory centers. How amazing is that? Okay, once we have the fuel and the physical hardware, this high-performance engine absolutely needs protection. Let's explore Section 3, engine oil and armor. Iron and antioxidants. Think of iron as the engine oil. It's the central component of hemoglobin, delivering oxygen straight to the cerebral cortex. But even more than that, iron is highly sequestered in the hippocampus. That's the very region of the brain dedicated to forming new memories and spatially mapping information. Without iron, the brain simply cannot breathe, and it can't record new data effectively. And this is actually a massive issue because nearly 10% of young American kids are iron deficient. What's startling is that iron deficiency in a child heavily mimics the symptoms of ADHD, so poor attention, fatigue, behavioral issues. To combat this, we've got to focus on iron-rich foods like lean beef, black bean burgers, or spinach. And hey, here's a fantastic nutritional hack for you. Always pair non-heme, plant-based irons with vitamin C. Think a squeeze of citrus or some strawberries on the side. It chemically enhances the body's ability to actually absorb that iron. Now for the armor. Because the pediatric brain is burning so much glucose and working so incredibly hard, it generates a byproduct called oxidative stress. If left unchecked, this can damage those delicate brain cells. Enter anthocyanins. These are powerful antioxidant pigments found in deeply colored fruits, and they act as a biological shield, protecting the brain from inflammation and cellular damage. This protective shield is exactly why berries are widely considered the ultimate brain food. Clinical trials have demonstrated that even short-term berry consumption physically improves executive function and verbal memory in children. The anthocyanins in blueberries and strawberries are so potent that they actually cross the blood-brain barrier, accumulate right in the hippocampus, and upregulate the specific genes associated with synaptic plasticity. They literally help the brain rewire itself for the better. Zooming out for a minute, you might be wondering, well, how do we synthesize all these microcomponents, the oats, the eggs, the salmon, the berries, into a daily routine that a kid will actually, eat? We look to the ultimate operating system, the Mediterranean diet. Let's get into section 4. Now, this diet isn't just a random list of foods. It's an overarching neuroprotective dietary pattern. It seamlessly combines 4 steps. Step 1, the healthy monounsaturated fats from olive oil. Step 2, the sustained energy fiber from legumes and whole grains. Step 3, the brain-protecting polyphenols from colorful veggies and berries. And Step 4, those DHA-rich lean proteins from fish and poultry. It hits every single neuro requirement we've talked about today.
And the hard data strongly backs up this operating system. Multiple observational studies from Europe and Chile have shown that school-aged children who highly adhere to the Mediterranean diet don't just feel better, they perform better. They show massive, statistically significant improvements in executive function, language skills, and creativity. Anatomically, MRI scans even suggest increased integrity in the brain's white and gray matter. That means faster, more efficient neural transmission.
Of course, knowing the science is one thing, but actually feeding a 7-year-old, whole different ballgame. If you have a picky eater, you can easily sneak this operating system into their routine. You can blend spinach or wild blueberries into a morning smoothie. They honestly won't even taste the greens. Well, unless they have that terrifying toddler's sixth sense. You can swap traditional fries for baked sweet potato fries to get that antioxidant hit, mash black beans into a cheese quesadilla for iron and fiber, or make homemade salmon nuggets instead of the processed chicken ones. Even just swapping mayo for mashed avocado gives them a massive boost of healthy fats. Small, consistent tweaks make an absolute world of difference. As researchers Ross and Morosky perfectly state, schooling builds human capital, skills, abilities, and resources, which ultimately shapes health and well-being. By addressing these nutritional gaps today, we're doing so much more than just helping a child pass a morning math test. We are literally laying down the physiological foundation for a lifetime of cognitive resilience, emotional stability, and intellectual curiosity. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought as you plan your child's next meal. Are you building a resilient supercomputer, or are you letting the engine run on fumes? The science is clear. What goes on the plate directly builds the brain. Let's make it count. Thanks for joining me today as we broke down the source material and keep feeding that curiosity.